Good morning, Rotary Club of Centennial.
Good morning. Good morning.
How's everybody today?
Very good.
Okay, I apologize for my voice. It's been going in and out. I'm over a big cold, so now it's just residual. So, Gordon Close, do you have an inspiration for us?
I hope so.
There he is. Okay.
After looking through the Rotary invocations, and I found something that had to deal with character and our flaws. Dear Lord, help me to relax about insignificant details. Beginning tomorrow at 7:41.23 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Help me to consider people's feelings, even if most of them are hypersensitive. Help me to take responsibility for the consequences of my actions, even though they're usually not my fault. Help me to not try to run everything. But if you need some help, please feel free to ask me. Help me to be more laid back, and help me to do it exactly right. Help me to take things more seriously, especially laughter, parties, and dancing. Give me patience, and I mean right now. Help me to not be a perfectionist. Did I spell that correctly? Help me finish everything help me to keep my mind on one thing. Oh, look, he had a waffle this morning. Oh, one at a time. Help me to do only what I can and trust you for the rest. And would you put that in writing? Keep me open to others' ideas, misguided though they may be. Help me follow established procedures. Hey, wait, this is wrong. Help me slow down and not hurry through things that I want to do. Thank you, Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Gordon. Mr. Ostergaard, could you please join us or lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Shattuck, how about a Rotary Minute?
Thank you. For new members of Rotary and for our guests, in 1985, Rotary International instituted a program to try and eradicate polio worldwide. In that year, there were 350,000 cases of paralytic polio, and for every case of paralytic polio, there were 200 non-paralytic cases. We've progressed to this point to where it is only endemic in 3 countries, Nigeria, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. As of a couple of days ago, globally, 15 cases of paralytic polio. There are 7 in Afghanistan, 8 in Pakistan. Last year at this time, on this date, Pakistan had only 2 cases, and Afghanistan had 8 cases. Worldwide, in 2018, there were 21 cases of polio in Afghanistan, 12 in Pakistan for 33 cases. And we're not halfway through the year yet, and we already have 15 cases of paralytic polio.
That's sobering, isn't it? By the way, along with Don's little talk today, how many of you have your polio pigs? I do. So Polio Pig Pickup Day is going to be the 28th of this month. So make sure you bring your polio pigs. Make sure you have people put change in them. Dollar bills are welcome. So are $10 bills, $20 bills, $100 bills, and checks. We do take checks as well. But yeah, the 28th, let's see what we can do to help fight polio and not see it make a rebound. Because with all the objections now to vaccines, I would hate to see it start to make a rebound, especially here in the United States. All right. We don't have a business minute today unless somebody wants to volunteer. Okay. Thanks to Mr. Paul Horiuchi, our visiting Rotarian, and Doug for helping with all the custodial duties today. I didn't see Cheryl out there today, but that was sitting in here. Is Cheryl here today?
She was there.
Was she? Okay. Was she greeting out there? Okay. All right. All right. And Mr. Gordon, that was an excellent inspiration. I know that you wrote that from the heart. Yes. So. Okay. We do have some visiting Rotarians today. These are all from Ken Hope's assistant governor's district. They're all new, or they're going to be the president of their clubs next year. They're president-elects this year. We have Marie Ross. Would you please stand and take a bow? There she is. There she is. Greg Hoskinson from Denver Southeast. Linda Spear from Inglewood. All right. And we also have Dick Castleman from Union Hills. And Ken, you said one of them wanted to... Yeah.
He wants to talk about his project.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay. Here's the microphone. You got a mic.
Thank you. University Hills has been having a golf tournament for years, I don't remember how many, and our president-elect nominee decided to do something different this year. So we're going to do a 5K fun run Saturday, July 13th, and asked for volunteers to go around to different clubs to promote it. Since I was coming here anyway, I volunteered to do it. Have a flyer here. We want to welcome individual runners, or if you want to put together a team or whatever. It's our big fundraiser. Half the money goes to fund our community and international projects. The other half goes to our scholarship fund. It basically is going to pay for a 4-year scholarship for a qualified student. Again, it's July 13th. I'll put flyers on the table. Anyone interested, please feel free to sign up on our website.
Thank you very much. And I do want to introduce Scott. I would say that he is a new Rotarian, but we have a board meeting tomorrow. But membership paperwork is in, so I'm sure you guys can welcome him as a new member today if you wanted to. And we have another visitor. Tom, you want to introduce Brett?
Right here. So Brett is a guest. I met Brett at the State of the City event, and he wanted to come by and check out the club, so I'll let Brett introduce himself.
Yeah, just briefly, just have 3 points for you this morning. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, Brett Weston. I live in Centennial. I'm a pastor. We're starting a church in Centennial in September. So, yeah, I really appreciated the State of the City and looked up at what's this Rotary thing and really appreciate what you guys do. So Tom was good enough to invite me. So, yeah, it's good to be here.
Well, welcome. Okay, so this is the month of May, so I'm going to go ahead and just get the birthdays done for the month. Deborah Jessup is going to be 39 on the 15th of this month. Angie O'Seeley is going to be 39 on the 25th of this month. And Mike Ober is going to be 16, or he was 16 yesterday. I don't know, is Mike here? I don't see him. Yeah, okay. Yeah, he's from his celebration, right? All right, we do have some wedding anniversaries this month. Randy and Nora Ernest on the 26th of May. How many years, Randy? How many years? Come on the spot. 19 years, great. Paul and Diana Fritzler on the 16th. I don't see Paul here today. All right, and then Angie and Dan O'Silly they were just celebrated theirs on the 2nd. Now, I was going through the monthly Rotary anniversaries, and this must have been a huge month 18 years ago. Yeah, Tom Buck, 18 years this month. John Holtzman, 1 year, just so you know. Roxy Hahn, 18 years. Paul Horiuchi, 16 years. Wow. Barb Medina, 18 years. Wow. And Ken Ostergaard, 18 years. I have a feeling that was kind of like the opening year.
It was.
Was it not? Yes, Tom. Yeah, Tom? No, it was your Rotary anniversary. How many years in Rotary? You've been married a lot more than 18 years, Tom. Yes, Mr. Horiuchi.
I didn't hear Mark, so.
Mark? What? How many years, Mark? 18 years? For some reason, it wasn't in the directory. We'll make sure we get you in there.
There's a number of us that were not members.
All right, well then go ahead, mention them. Okay, well all the charter members that are present, please stand up. Thank you. Jeez, what a crowd, what a crowd.
Way to go, Chris.
Okay, let's get to a little bit of club business here. No, 7 weeks. 7 weeks. John, do you have a website minute today? No? Okay. I do have a kind of a sad announcement to make. Patrick McGuire has requested a leave of absence for at least 6 months. Unfortunately, it has to do with his wife and her dementia. So we had a long talk on Friday, and so he just needs some time to sort things out. So please wish your best to Patrick and his wife. Now, the opioid program. You know, Samantha's going to be president next year, so she can't do it. We've had nobody step up, and we have word that Heritage Hills would like to have another opioid program and drug take back in August. Now, I have spoken with the new sheriff, and he's willing to participate in any way he can. So we don't have any holdups for that. We just need a champion to run this thing for August. So if you'd like to volunteer for that, please either let me know or let Samantha know. But you know, the last 2 opioid or drug take-backs, we took in over 400 pounds of drugs, got them out of cabinets and off the streets. So it's a very worthwhile program, and I'd like to see Centennial continue to do it. Okay, and I already mentioned the polio pigs. That's 28th. That's the last meeting of this month. Bring your polio pigs. And Samantha, you have an announcement for the millennials?
Good morning, everyone. So late last night, because millennials actually stay up while I'm in bed, Sarah texted me. Apparently on June 7th, the millennials will be providing dinner at the Ronald McDonald House. And so they are asking for 3 to 4 of us from Big Rotary to come and join them. I've also told them to go ahead and reach out to John Peterson to put it on the website so that there will be a volunteer sign up, all of that as well. So as more details come, I will let you know. But June 7th, so mark your calendar.
Very good. That's a lot of fun if you've never done it before. It's in the evening. It's like, I think about 5 o'clock, if I remember right, from last time I did it. And I think that we bring stuff and we also serve a meal at the Ronald McDonald House.
And are we doing Ronald McDonald that's at the 225?
Yeah, it's off of 225, and I can't remember the cross street, but it's on. Yeah, it's on the frontage road on the west side of 225.
Right.
Some of the stories you hear from some of the guests there just melt your heart when you see what these people are going through. Makes your troubles seem a lot smaller than they may be in your mind. Yes, John.
For all you new members, if you don't know what a polio pig looks like, we have these available. So this is what we're doing, and we collect those on the 28th.
Yes, 28th of this month.
That's what it is, polio pig.
How do we get one?
We have them in the cabinet back here. Yes, John.
For new members and guests, for every $1 that we donate the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation will match it 2 for 1.
Good point. I have one at my place of business that, we make people wait for their vehicles while we work on them. And so I always seed it with a couple bucks when it starts to get a little empty, and then put it in another box. So if you have a place of business, you can do it. Or if you have room on your desk at work, you can do it. Or just take your spare change and throw it in the pig instead of having to carry it around. All right, do we have any travel gifts? Mr. Horiuchi. You should have brought a trailer up with travel gifts in it.
Hello, everybody. It's good to be back. A lot of new faces, which is good to see. But anyway, I just got back from snowbirding in Arizona. While I was in Arizona, I took a trip up north of us to a place called Wickenburg. Have you heard of Wickenburg? And there, can you just take it out for me? I found this pottery. It's interesting how it's made. It's made by the local Navajo artisans, and it's made out of horsehair. You know that the horsehair. The Indians revere that horse as a symbol of power, strength, and beauty. So they passed that on into their pottery. So I just decided I'd pick it up, and hopefully I don't have to buy it back at the.
Hey, Paul, I thought you were the symbol of strength, power, and beauty.
Wrong.
No. All right. Yes, sir.
My wife and I were traveling the last 2 weeks, and I brought back a couple things. But first of all, I have a quiz. Who knows where Jupiter and 119 were? That's right.
What was that?
They were the 2 engines that met the Central Pacific Railroad and Union Pacific Railroad at Promontory Point on May 10th, 150 years ago this Friday.
Go Andres.
So I have a T-shirt for the Christmas auction for commemorating the Golden Spike 150th anniversary. Yes, I did. I also, we were traveling all of the national parks in southeastern Utah, and we had to spend the night in St. George, and they happened to have an In-N-Out burger. So I have an In-N-Out burger T-shirt. That's also special because it's the 70th anniversary T-shirt for In-N-Out burger. And then...
Hey, Paul, are you taking lessons?
I have a Monument Valley calendar. That's a 2020 calendar, so you don't have to worry when you buy it that it's expired.
Good call. No coasters?
All right, if there's no more travel gifts, we're going to do Happy Bucks. And I think Deborah Jessup is going to do a fine job today.
We hope so.
I'll leave you guys till later. Okay, who's ready? All right.
Thank you. This is a happy buck for the Colorado Avalanche. They're still in it. They won last night. Go Avalanche.
I don't have a happy buck, but who put the cash on the table here and what is it for? Blue Marble. Blue Marble from... Oh, today.
Anybody else?
I don't know.
What's wrong with you? You could be fined,
Actually, one of these happy bucks is for Paul, and the other is for me. We just so greatly appreciate John Peterson inviting us to be here at 6 a.m. in order to show us the completely rebuilt AV station, which cost him, I don't know, 15 seconds, 20 seconds to show us how it worked. But the real thank you is John spent the entire weekend automating the AV equipment for Rotary.
All right.
Okay, that's just a ditto. I wanted to recognize John for doing that.
This is because Paul is back. That's what he told me to say when he gave me that $1.
I got $3. The first one is for Paul. Very nice seeing you again, my friend. Second happy bug is for our guests. Thank you for being with us. It's really nice to have all of you with us. And the third one, I just want to mention what John was talking about, the meeting of the railroads. That's a really cool part of history. If you even remotely like railroads, the story of the Transcontinental Railroad built from Omaha, Nebraska, all the way to Sacramento, LA, really, really cool. So you should read about it or watch a movie or something.
We're talking to you.
The first one is actually from my lovely wife who had to work early this morning. Her boy Martin Truex Jr. won the rain-delayed race yesterday, so she's giddy. And the second one is for me, for all our guests. Thanks for coming.
Anybody happy over here?
So, I have, we'll come back later. I have one happy buck for Brett. Just appreciate him coming out today and his interest in the club.
I have a happy 5 for our guests and just happy to be back. Thanks.
Anybody happy at this table?
Go Avalanche. Go Nuggets.
Go Rockets. 50 cents.
I have $2, one for each of our speakers, Wayne Snodgrass and Steve DeBoer.
I've got 2. I know it's not official yet, but I appreciate the warm welcome. And what I think I'm really looking forward to the most is next time I'll be able to tell Phil that I have paid for breakfast. So.
He fits right in.
He fits right in, Phil. You know who to pick on, don't you?
He comes back.
Anybody happy here?
Oh, no, ma'am. Not enough to.
You're never happy. What's wrong with you?
I'm happy for all of them. So I got 3. One, just not being here lately, so that's kind of a... Yeah, that's... I should take a collection. One, I usually always give a happy buck to the food drive that I get to bring my kid to, and this time around I brought one, and she had a great time. It's a long time ago because that was the first buck. I haven't been here. So, and then the third $1 is for our guests, but especially for the Sons of the American Revolution up there who I just, when they said they're going to show up in outfits, I said, you guys are hired. All right.
Anybody else at this table? Boy, we got a bunch of sleepers today.
Happy to have Paul back. We're glad to have you with us.
I have 3. The first one is welcome to all our guests and our speaker. I'm looking forward to your presentation. Second one is Paul. It's really great to see you again. And the third one is for Youth Exchange. Barbara and I, and actually, interestingly enough, Linda, who's sitting here, who's visiting from Inglewood. We were at the Outbound Orientation last weekend. Linda's husband is the country contact for Italy, and we prepared 19 students to go on exchange starting in August.
We had a wonderful evening with a friend we hadn't seen in, I would think, about 20 years. She lives on the other side of town. You would think we'd get together more often. But her husband died in February, and sometimes that's a relief because she had to take care of him. He was wheelchair bound all during their marriage, and she is doing great.
Oh, stand up when you have 5 minutes left. Oh, that's right.
I have 3. One is for our guests. Actually, at Pets, all of us got together and we decided that all the president nominees, soon to be presidents, would meet. at every club for the first 4 or 5 months, and we're doing alphabetically. So Centennial is a home club today, and then we're going to meet shortly afterwards. So thanks for all the president-elects for coming today. Number 2 is kind of a sad buck to Patrick McGuire. We're really going to miss him. One hell of a guy, I tell you. And happy buck to the Avalanche.
I have 2 bucks. One is for Paul, Dr. Paul. So glad to have you back. And the rest, the other dollar is for our guests and our speaker. Thank you for being here.
I have a happy buck because I turned in to John all my paperwork for a blue badge.
All right.
Well, I have a happy buck. Yesterday, my physical therapist managed to use a new gizmo and push that knot out of my hip, so I'm not quite as crippled today. And Paul, we're so glad to have you back. We always miss him. And as you're all celebrating all the Rotarians today, well, we have one that's missing, but I can honestly say his entire family is a member of this Rotary Club, and nobody else can do that.
Thank you. I have a couple. One, thanks for all of our guests, and glad you could join us. And 2 is for Ken Hope. Thank you for bringing all our guests and all you do for as ADG.
I just wanted to say thank you for having us here, Ken. It's a great experience to learn from other clubs, the things that you do. And my grandfather was the son of the American Revolution, so I guess I could apply for a daughter of the American Revolution. Thank you.
I have I have 5. One is for all of our guests, thank you. One is for our soon-to-be new member. Appreciate that. Maybe another one over there, too. I don't know. The third is how thankful I am for all of the founding members that are here today. Without them, we would have never had this club. Look at how far you've come. Serious. Just think about how far you've come. The 4th is for my wife. She's finally been officially released, and her neck surgery was successful, and she has no more pain in her neck. So, except for me. Except for me. And then the 4th is that I'm finally over this damn cold. So.
And I have a happy 5. Thursday, I leave for Portugal. And I'm going to fly over and go to Porto for a week, and then we will be flying over to the island of Madeira and staying there for a week. So, needless to say, we'll have some travel gifts. All right. And we're going to fly into Boston first and stay overnight, and then go on over, and then on a return trip, we'll be back in Boston. So, we'll be having a good time.
Sounds good. Mr. Bellum, would you mind, are you introducing our speakers today? Yes.
Lunch is Monday at 11 o'clock at Willow Creek. I would like to see some new faces there. If I see somebody there who's never been there, for my own private stash, I will give you a brand new Rotary pin with the new logo. So a little incentive for you to be there Monday at Willow Creek at 11 o'clock.
Okay.
Actually.
Oh, wait. We got a couple more people that slid in here. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I heard that I earned something that I was going to pick up last week, but...
Oh, there's a blue badge. Yeah, and I'm sorry it's on my desk at work. It's been one of those weeks, so I'll bring it next week for you, okay? We'll do a formal presentation next week. Yes, Mark.
It's movie night tomorrow night, 3 to 6:30. Roman Holiday will be the movie.
Where's that at?
That's at the Coble Library in the Forum Theater.
Okay. Yes, Mary Alice.
I just want to add to Ken's comment that if you want to come to the luncheon, you need to make a reservation. Either call or email me by Friday noon.
Can we do that online as well? No? Oh, okay. All right. Okay, are we ready for our speakers now? Yes.
So I'm not actually introducing him, but I will say, because I'll let Don do that because Don is a member of the group, but when he talked about the Sons of the American Revolution, we had a big family thing a while back, and we followed one of our family members back to a gentleman by the name of John Tuttle, who is my 8th great-grandfather or something like that, who died at Valley Forge. Clearly recreated himself prior to that event, because otherwise we wouldn't be saying that. So I'll let Don introduce our guests and a little bit more about the Sons of the American Revolution.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. We're going to go back in history a little bit before the meeting of the trains at Promontory Point. The Sons of the American Revolution is a patriotic organization for boys and men. Women tried to get into it, and we told them no. So they created Daughters of the American Revolution, which is a larger organization.
Sorry, Lori.
Sons of the American Revolution here in Colorado, there are about 400 members. There are 5 chapters. In order to be a member of the Sons of the American Revolution, you have to be able to trace your lineage back to an individual who fought for the American side during the American Revolution.
Yeah.
My patriot, and that's how we refer to our ancestor who fought at the Battle of Bunker Hill. His brother died from injuries suffered at the Battle of Bunker Hill. On the left is Wayne Snodgrass. He is president of the Castle Rock chapter. It's a brand new chapter. I'm a member of it. Wayne is president of it. On the right is Steve DeBoer, previous president of the Mount Evans chapter. Wayne was also president of the Mount Evans chapter. Both of them were president of the Colorado Society of Sons of the American Revolution.
At different times.
At different times. In order to try and present history to students in our schools, SAR has created what is called the Patriot Chest. They're going to make an abbreviated presentation of the Patriot Chest, and what it is memorabilia, items from the Revolutionary War period. So, welcome.
Okay. Well, thank you, Don, and it's great to be here. Our normal presentations, we target the 4th and 5th grades, and so
you're fit right in right here.
This is
a little higher level than today, but
this is going to be easy. Yeah. With the 4th and 5th graders, they like to play and touch and feel and all that kind of thing. And we basically kind of let them lead the direction of the meeting and ask questions on things that they're interested in, because we may be telling a story over here and they see something over there and they say, well, how about that? So if we don't go and answer their questions right away, then they kind of lose interest in if we're following a story. However, now that you're mature, we might try to stay on the story a little bit more. I'm going to kind of introduce it and go from the founding of our country all the way, and not only the country as it is, but the colonies and the first establishments that we've had back at the beginning of the 1600s. And then I'll zoom in and get to right up before the French and Indian War, talk a little bit about the French and Indian War, and then we'll slow down a little bit between the French and Indian War and the Revolutionary War to kind of talk about and show a bunch of things on how we ended up in a Revolutionary War. During that time, Steve will take over, and he's got some great stories about how the war got started and some of the battles that we had. And we'll jump in on each other's story anyway. I have a complete chest of all these items. It's out in the car. Today we're using Steve's complete chest. And we started this about 5 years ago, and it's kind of grown, and now we have about 5 or 6 chests sprinkled around Colorado that are being presented to mostly to the elementary schools. All right, the story basically starts where we all know about Jamestown, and I think you'll recall that was settled in 1607. and that was by the English, of course. So does anyone happen to know when the French and when the Spanish established their permanent settlements? Now, all three countries, plus other countries, had been trying to set up settlements in the Americas during the 1500s. And the Spanish were successful at that in Central America and South America area. But we're talking about the United States as far as permanent settlements. Anybody got an idea when the Spanish did it and where?
Florida.
Yes, Florida, St. Augustine. And that was in 1608, 1 year after the English settlement. How about the French? Where did they settle? Quebec. Quebec. Well, this is easy.
It's too easy. They know what I'm saying.
And that was in 1609. So there was 1 year right after another. All these countries kind of jumped into what's now the United States. So over the next, say, 150 years, from like 1600 all the way up to 1750, the colonies started. And what happened, and the English kept moving over, they settled all the colonies, and by then they had 13 colonies and a heavy concentration of people up and down where the original 13 states are. Meanwhile, the Spanish had Florida. They had kind of southern parts of what's now the United States. They had Mexico, Texas, and then kind of the furthest west. And that was sparsely settled, and that was basically where their settlers went out, put a flag in the ground, and said, this is ours. And they really weren't heavily populated. The French, on the other hand, they went up into Canada, and they followed the St. Lawrence to the Great Lakes, and then all the way down the Mississippi Valley. And they basically did the same thing. They established a few forts, and they claimed this is all France. Well, that kind of boxed in the English, and they were along the 13 colonies. Now, I've got a few maps. I'll just start these around. You can look at them and pass them on if you would, please. There you go. And basically, this is showing what I just talked about. We have a real squeeze going on, and this is, again, the middle of the 1750s. And we have a real crunch with the French and Indian. The English were claiming all states like Pennsylvania, Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia, and all that. They said, everything west of here is ours. And the French were saying, no, we've got the Mississippi Valley. We've got everything else. You are not supposed to come out here. So the Indians, and there were skirmishes with the French forts and the English settlers as that took place. And then the Indians, who were being squeezed out by a heavily populated English, were pushed further and further west, and so they were more traded friendly with the French. So they were really on the French side that says, we got to stop this. They're just going to run over everything. So the French and Indians, the Shawnees and about 6 other tribes got together out of the middle range of the country. And they formed, well, the English, too, they kind of formed the English sent over a lot of troops from England, and they tried to get a lot of the colonists to join them, which they did, but not as much as they hoped. And they, too, had Indians that supported the English, the Cherokees, and about 2 other tribes. So, anyway, that set the stage for the war. But this entered into what was a bigger war, the 7 Years' War, which was going on all the way around the world. It was going on in Northern Africa, India, and other places all over the world itself, but a real heavy concentration in North America on who owned the property. So anyway, that set the stage. The war took place. The English had more people, so that meant the French had to send everything, all their armed forces, other than the Indians, they had to come from France. So that was a logistics problem for the French. The English were able to win that war, and they settled, and basically what they won was all the land to the Mississippi, and as a settlement for that one. So now we're kind of find ourselves at the end of the French and Indian War. The country's kind of split up, as you see with those maps there after the war. And then let's take a quick look at what was the colonists. How did they live in a day-to-day activity? And as some of you are similar to Steve and my age, and so we've heard stories. We've heard stories from our grandparents when we were young that really tie into a lot of this. There were two things that the colonists and at that point in time, there were about 90% agrarian and agriculture-oriented society, and about 10% in villages. There really weren't any major cities, huge cities, but they were starting to grow. So that's a huge difference. Today, it's about 2% of the nation is in agriculture, and all the rest of us are in all of everything else you can imagine. So it's a huge change over the last 150 years or so, 250 years. Anyway, at that point in time, how did a typical family live? They had two things they had to do every day. You want to guess what those two necessities were? Right. Well, water and fire. So fire for heating, cooking, and boiling, cleaning, all kinds of things. So we had what was the young people? You started work, and everybody had big families basically back then, especially those in agriculture. And the reason you had big families was there was no Social Security, so your kids would take care of you when you got old. But more importantly, you needed workers on your farm. And so if you were, say, 4 or 5 years old, a young kid, you started out and you'd have a yoke similar to this. You put it on their shoulders, you'd have a bucket on each side, and you'd go to the water. Almost all of the farms were located near rivers and creeks and streams and springs, or you had to walk a long ways to get water every day. So even if the spring was right outside your house, you still had to bring the water in. So that became a real chore for the young people. What the young people also did was the minor jobs as far as collecting the eggs, feeding the small animals, some of the cleaning, some of the gathering firewood, starting the fires, putting the water at the places where it had to be. Then when you became a teenager, you basically helped the adults. So the teenagers and the adults did the real hard labor. And the hard labor basically was everything from plowing the fields with mules and horses, from building barns, building fences, slaughtering the animals and dressing them, and then preparing them for storage and for food, as well as the other hard labors around. Some of it dealt with the hunting, if you were on the edge of the frontier and so on. A lot of it was hunting. So, and then the villagers, they basically candlestick makers, the buggy whips and the buggies themselves, plus wagons, plus leather goods, plus fine clothing. So then what did the grandparents, what did all of us do in those days? We basically helped the ladies in doing the cooking, the cleaning, and making the clothes, and sharpening the tools and that sort of thing. So that kind of leads us to kind of the living we had. Does anybody know what this is? Yes, it is. And it has inside, you'd have a candle made out of beeswax that would basically sit here. And it had all these holes chopped in it, and you had a little pattern that was on the doors of your lantern itself. As you were walking down the road, you'd basically see this, you'd see the pattern, you could see them ahead of a distance away, so you'd know exactly who it was you were meeting on the road itself. So we can pass this around a little bit. They also had toys for the kids, which included everything from homemade dolls to kind of throw and catch kind of homemade toys of this kind, to whistles, to flutes, to that. And this game, where you throw a dice, they had dice, you throw a dice, you get a number, and then you can throw up the number, and then you try to see how many ways you can get that. So with 10, you get either 10 or you get a 9 plus 1, 8 plus 2, and so on. So it kind of teaches a little bit of, and who could get the most of these turned up in any throw won the game, basically.
Taught kids how to add, basically.
Yeah. So then you would have, if you had candles sitting around the house instead of a lantern that you're carrying outside, they would basically sit in a fixture like these, which could collect the wax as it spilled over. This turned out.
The bottom piece.
There.
See it.
Okay, I'll tell you what it does. This was a candle and it has a little spiral control mechanism here. And most families who had teenage daughters had one of these.
It's called a courting candle.
So you'd sit there and you could crank it up to where, and it burnt, I don't know, every 15 minutes it burned maybe a quarter of an inch or something. So you would, if you were really in good stead, the father of the family would allow a courting, a next door neighbor or cousin or whoever comes over to see your daughter. You basically light the candle and the father sets the time. You go down and he says, okay, you basically got till the candle gets to this point in time, and then you got to leave. And so that was ranged from 15 minutes to a couple hours or who knows what. So that was kind of the clock that everybody watched at the time. We kind of, as we move into some of the other aspects, we'll talk about it when we talk about the acts. Now, so the French and Indian War ended in 1754, or it went from 1754 to 1763. So in 1763, the French and Indian War was basically done. Everybody was reasonably happy. The English won. Everything was great. We'd won the property or the rights to move all the way to the Mississippi. Several things happened. King George III basically said, the Indians helped us win that war. We're going to put a proclamation all the way up and down the Blue Ridge Mountains that says no settlement west of here. I was like, what are you talking about? We just fought a war so we could move west, and now we can't move west. So then King George also said, this war just about broke the bank in England. It was a bigger war, as a world war, as I mentioned earlier, and that just really took all the resources of England. So England said, those colonists didn't help us as much as we wanted them to. And those colonists didn't pay their fair share of what the cost of this war was. So we're going to start taxing them. So they went through 10 years of adding on taxations. And we'll talk a little bit about that as Steve kicks it off here. And that led up to skirmishes, ending up in battles, leading into the Revolutionary War, which is what we're all about. So I'm going to shift over here a little bit, let Steve pick it up, and we'll talk about some of the first acts. I'll skim through titles, and then we'll go from there. Some of the very first acts were the Navigation Act, of where the ships were allowed only to deal with England. So England had to control all the shipping. We had the Sugar Act, that Steve's going to talk about, Quartering Act, Stamp Act, Townsend Acts, leading up to skirmishes, and then the infamous Boston Tea Party. And then we kind of get into some major battles that lead into the Revolutionary War. So you can see this period of only about 10 years, or maybe 12 years, from the end of the French and Indian War, continually to getting worse and worse and worse for the colonists and the patriots. So
Yorktown was 1781. Good.
So,
Mr. President, how much time do I have left here so I don't overrun my...
You have about 15 minutes.
Great. Great. I'm going to preface this with my closing comments first and an appeal, because I always talk myself into a corner and then I leave out the good part. First of all, we both want to thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning. This is great. The fun part for me is not what I can tell you, but what I get out of it coming back and what I'm reminded about, what I'll use in my presentations going forward. This is about America. We're trying to give our kids an appreciation for this country and for their responsibilities as citizens here. This is about, as we finish up, we're talking about the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the way we're set up, the Bill of Rights. We had a number of states that wouldn't sign the Constitution unless those Bill of Rights were in there. They had just fought a war and there was nothing specific saying what we were going to get out of it. We're trying to convince the kids. Their job going forward on saving this place. I'll be an old fat guy in a rocking chair and I can't do much. It's up to them. We'll have some kids say, well, it's up to the government. No, who's the government? It's up to the president. No, it's not. It's up to them. It's up to the kids to take over and do this. And I'm reminded on things like this and all the great things you're doing in the Rotary. There are so many clubs that I get involved with or have an opportunity to visit. This is America, right? It's all the things you're doing now. Doesn't have anything to do with politics. We've been arguing since the 1700s. The Revolutionary War was as much a civil war as it was a war against the British. It was fully 50% of the people in the colonies wanted nothing to do with starting a new country. They were loyal to the king. They had been for 140 years at that point. Think how many years back that is from now. They'd been loyal to the king for that long. And for those first years of the war and right through in the southern, it was brutal. If the British troops were in your neck of the woods and the Tory militias, you burned your neighbors out who were not loyal. You killed their livestock. You killed their families. You burned their farms. When we came in and the Continentals were in, we did the same thing back to them. And it was brutal. So we've always been arguing. Today's nothing new, right? And I'm sure everybody here doesn't necessarily agree on what is happening in this country. But you're doing all these good things together. And that's America. You make it go forward. You have your differences. You move on. Make them known, state your case, know what you're talking about. We're trying to convince the kids. We're trying to impress on them that that's how the country's always worked. Pick up the torch and keep it going. For those of you that are teachers or retired teachers or know teachers and principals, the program that we do here is free. We do it at any school where we're asked to participate. We've been involved with thousands of kids over the last 2 years, hundreds of schools where we've done this. We always have a great time. So thanks again for letting us be here. We joked a little bit about being on a different level on our audience this morning. I remember still the first one of these I did in Jeffco. And I was with another reenactor. And I said, boy, I've never done this before. A little nervous. He says, don't worry. These are fifth graders. You can tell them anything and they'll believe it. You're home free. So we're sitting there. They have all the fifth graders at once to start the day. They're sitting on the gym floor. He's playing guitar to quiet them down. He's playing a little folk song. And he asks the kid, does anybody know what this little ditty is? This little boy stands up in the back and he says, sir, that is World Turned Upside Down. That was played for the British when Cornwallis's surrogates surrendered in 1781 to General Washington at Yorktown. I said, whoa, give him the gun, I'll go drink coffee. What do you mean they won't know what I'm saying? So we run into that regularly. We have a great time. So anyway, this is what we do. We go in, the fifth graders still have a colonial period during their year, and we try and make that come to life. So this is not just simply banging through dates and names and history and trying to stay awake as it was when most of us went to school. I hated that stuff, I really did. So we come in on this. A war is a pretty nasty thing. How did we get into something like that? Wayne mentioned, King's out of money after the French and Indian War. He's going to go to his most successful people, and he's going to start imposing taxes. Most successful is us, out of the entire world. Woo. I need some technical assistance here. And I'm here to help. Thank you.
While he's redoing that, I'll just explain a second for the two uniforms.
Am I on?
This is the Continental uniform, and that really kind of came into play. It's a derivative of the English uniforms.
This is our common.
And that was.
Folks, I'll just hold it, guys, and we'll do it this way.
As we got closer to the Revolutionary War, this became somewhat a uniform, even though there were browns and greens and grays and other colors, but it was similar to this. What I'm wearing is just a hunting frock, and most of the fighters in the Revolutionary War were militia. And we basically wore this when we went hunting. We carried our weapons, our ammunition, and that, and we hunted with an English rifle, an old brown bess, they called this one, and it basically a flintlock that you loaded up in the front here. We really didn't get issued with the French weapons until later on, and that's Steve will talk about that as we get closer to the war. But these were the two. I was on call. Every community had its own militia.
16 to 60.
Yeah, that measured, that basically kept control, kind of like a police department, a fire department, and kind of a little military defense unit all in one.
Met once a month. 16 to 60 included all the old dogs like us. Now the younger men with the better rifles, better muskets, better shape, were known as the Minutemen. They literally carried all their equipment every place, including the church, and had to be ready to go at a moment's notice. So that was a different era. So the king says, I'm going to tax these. I need my money back. They didn't do their part. We try and let the kids know that these were real laws and things happening that got us into it. First one was the Sugar Act. Import sugar, molasses, import only in that it was the first major one. Kind of got our attention a little bit. We're saying, whoa, what is this now? This went on for a short period of time. And the next thing to come, though, is the Stamp Act. This is a stamp, right? It's the tax stamp that was impressed in wax on everything. This is what sugar looked like at that time. In fact, until the mid-1800s. This is how sugar came to your home. Everybody had a sugar nipper at their house to break off pieces, crush them. So now comes the Stamp Act. This is a little more urgent to us. This is pretty much everything was paper. You want to buy newspaper? You pay the king. You want to write a letter? You pay the king. You want to buy paper? You buy the king. You need a legal document? You pay the king. You want to buy playing cards? You pay the king. And it was significant. If you're a young person, we're telling the kids, you saved, you did chores for your parents, you wanted to buy a deck of cards. In our money now, this set of deck of cards was worth about 58 cents. So you save, and you work, and you go to the Settlers, and you take your 58 cents in and says, oh, I want that deck of cards. And he gives it to you, and he says, oh, but wait a minute. I need a shilling for the king. Now, a shilling's worth about $5 today. That's the kind of taxes that were going on. You start paying the equivalent of 2 or 3 cents for a piece of paper, but $5 tax to the king. See where we're going. Remember, we've been here 140 years without any of this going on. Small villages, but towns as well, right? We had timber industries, we had shipbuilding industries, we traded internationally out of Boston, some of our larger ports. We're on our own. We've had our own country for 140 years. And I impress upon the kids, and I fudge it by about 20 years, I said, that's almost all the way back to Abraham Lincoln if you started counting from now. That's a long time we've been here. So these taxes are coming down through. Got the Stamp Act on everything. We say, we're not going to pay these. Tax collectors, we tar and feather them. Pretty nasty deal. Jerk them out of bed in the middle of the night, strip them naked, pour tar over them, put feathers on them, and carry them through town on a pole to be made fun of. King didn't like that very much, so he sent troops. Comes the Quartering Act. They put troops in our homes. You wonder why that's in the Bill of Rights? Because they were doing it back then. You don't want to pay taxes? We'll send troops, and they'll stay at your house. And we impress upon the kids, and I'll ask them their name. John, you've got a pretty nice bedroom. What if a soldier comes to your door and says, I understand you've got a nice room, John. I'll take that now. You go sleep in the barn. That was happening. Your dad might not have the money to feed his family. He better feed that trooper first before anything else happens. That comes first. If he's walking through the kitchen, your mom has a nice tea set or a nice silver that she got when she was married. He's fully justified in saying, that's a really nice set. Box it up. I'm sending it to my wife in London. And that was going on regularly. Women couldn't go out of the house. The assaults were never ending, and they weren't prosecuted for them. So we said, you can't do that. We have laws against that sort of thing. So then comes a declaratory act that says, your laws don't count. Only the laws made in London. Take the laws away. It's getting worse, it's getting worse, it's getting worse. You don't want to pay your taxes? You want to say something bad about the king? You'll be taken out in front of your house and you'll be flogged, or you'll be beaten in front of the neighbors and put in prison. You'll get the idea pretty soon. At some point, even those supporting the king were being treated as badly as anybody else. Started to switch that to some extent on there. So this went on for a number of years. Had an incident in Boston. We were throwing snowballs at a small group of British troops. Snowballs happen to have oyster shells and rocks and things, and we scared the hell out of them. One of them fired, whether he tripped and fired, whether he did it on purpose, all of them did. A number of us were killed. This is where I want to stress, and particularly to the kids, because in the past we've been through a number of years that the war was only about a bunch of old, fat, white guys that were rich doing this stuff. Does anybody know the name Crispus Attucks? Have you heard that name? First person possibly killed in the Boston Massacre. Crispus Attucks was an African American. First killed. First man killed in the war. We make that point to the kids. If they're Hispanic, the King of Spain was having the people in Presidios donate money to the American cause. The Presidio in Texas was rounding up cattle and sending them to feed our troops. Donations from California, from the Presidio there. It was all ranks of society. The African American man, Crispus Attucks, that died was a free black. He escaped. He was a dock worker. He was from the richest to the poorest. Everybody was taking part. Boston Massacre. Now we knew they'd kill us. Pretty serious. We talk about Paul Revere, about a year or so after that, and his ride, and the dangers there. Boston was an occupied city, completely full. So when we all just maybe thoughtlessly read about one if by land and two if by sea and lanterns in the church, this was big stuff. If you've been to the Old North Church in Boston, that's 70 or 80 feet up the top of that steeple. And all there was a ladder going up, and these lanterns were pretty big. Somebody had to crawl up there. You couldn't show those lanterns for more than just a few seconds to get the message across, because the troops would be coming. They'd see that up there. So Paul Revere took off, along with Charles Dawes. There were two. They never made it past Lexington. They were going there because Sam Adams and John Hancock had escaped Boston, were there. The general sent about 500 of the British troops. They were to go to Lexington. They would arrest the two of them, either hang them there or send them back to London to have it done there. And then they would continue on to Concord, to the Armory. Paul Revere was kind of a circuit rider. Not kind of, he was a circuit rider in addition to being a silversmith. He'd been to Concord a couple weeks before. They thought the British were coming. They removed the cannons from that armory. Those were gone. That night, the two of them rode, stopped, as you know, at every farm and every church and every small village and spread the word. And they were yelling, but who are we still? We were the British. The regulars are coming. So on they went. They were both captured and arrested in Lexington. There was a third man, though, Robert Prescott, a doctor. He lived in Concord. He was in Lexington visiting his girlfriend that night. And he escaped of the three, and he went on to caution them. So they get to Lexington. The militia met them. There's about 60 people. These are shopkeepers, right? Butchers, preachers, fathers and sons. And they're going to stop 500 of the best troops on the face of the earth. This was a seasoned army that was coming in here. Didn't work so well. Somebody fired a shot. In retrospect, it might have been one of our guys behind a wall, but somebody fired a shot, and the British troops opened fire, and another group of Americans went down. This is the shot heard around the world, and really the start of a revolution. So on the British go to Concord. And when they got there, they'd been cautioned. All the muskets, all the powder, all the musket balls had been removed and been buried in the cornfields, buried in the woods. There were no muskets there. But as a result of just the signals, remember there's no phones or radios at that time, it's just the men riding and shouting. And each place they stopped, there were signal fires going up, musket shots, bells ringing. What they found in Concord was 4,000 militiamen. This is over a period of only about 15 hours that they assembled this many people and put them in one spot. And they caught it there. If you read diaries of the British troops, they didn't think very much of us. There were a number of them that came in when they first arrived in Boston. They were surprised that we didn't live in trees and we wore clothes, right? Which was completely contrary to what they thought. But their other thought, their belief, was that we were cowards. And we'd turn and run when the first shot was fired, so they had this thing under control. Well, that didn't happen. And it didn't happen at Concord. And we shot the hell out of them all the way back to Boston. We killed more than a third of them, and that started things off. Okay?
We have about 2 minutes for questions.
Good
Two
enough.
minutes for questions?
Bunker Hill after that, and then, of course, the war beyond there.
there were 185 major battles in the Revolutionary War. And for all the states that were involved, we always think about New England, we think about New York, we think about things like that, we think about Yorktown. But most of the battles, more than any other state, were fought in South Carolina. And so that, as Cornwallis and his group were trying to go through the whole 13 colonies, and that did not work well, because that's when the Patriots really learned how to fight.
And it was desperate by then. If you get a chance, there's a book called The Hornet's Nest that was written by Jimmy Carter. It's a novel, but it's based on fact the whole way through. We're desperate. We're down to a total of less than 200 troops, period, in the South to fight against the British Army. If they defeated it, the war was over. Same when they went across the river on Christmas night into Trenton. He'd started the year before with over 20,000 troops. He's down to less than 2,200, and most of them get to go home next week because their enlistment is up. He had to win something in a hurry. The war would have been over. And we weren't about a separate country. General Washington's battle flag from Boston when they started. We've got the 13 stripes for the colonies. Well, look at here. There's no stars. We weren't a separate country. We just wanted our rights as citizens, as British citizens at that time. So long and involved. But this is what we try and convey to the kids. And again, at the end, their job, their responsibility to carry forward.
I guess a couple of questions. Did you suggest anyone? Yes.
Just one question. Can you bring in the replica muskets to schools nowadays?
I'm sorry?
Can you bring in the replica muskets into schools nowadays?
We have done, like I say, over almost 100 schools. We've only had one problem. That was in the Cherry Creek district. It was not too long after the shooting there, so we understood it. That was not a problem, and if we let people know before we come in, we have replica muskets. If you have a rule in your school or in the county or the school district, we can do this just as easily without, but that's a hit with the kids. They're really interested.
The most we do with a musket, of course, they're never loaded, or never any way bullets are firing. We do cock it and we do spark it, and that way the kids at least get to see that. So that's basically just. And that's the most that ever happens with a musket in a school. So
we show them how it's sparked. Crest Hill and Highlands Ranch, a different deal. Their principal said, of course, we do get to shoot these, right? We thought, well, that'll work. We'll just bring a bunch of guys. I said, we got to check with security. Come on down, I'll introduce you. And I said, well, we'd still have to check with Douglas County, with the sheriff's office. He'll be here in 10 minutes. He'll want to shoot these too. So with that one, we lined most of the teachers and the principal and adults up.
They shoot
they
blanks,
actually get to shoot black powder.
Yeah.
Of course, with nothing in it. And we talk just fun things. We keep this fun. We don't emphasize what it did, and it did some terrible things. But things like loading it. Got a pan on a flintlock. We'd pour powder into there, right? There's a hole that goes into the barrel. So when you put the powder in, you want this to go off. You want it to be lucky when you want to shoot. You turn it immediately after putting the powder in the pan, and you knock on wood for luck. That's where they came from. General Washington wanted us to be able to reload and fire 4 times in a minute. I can do about 3. And,
I can do maybe 1.
Of course, this was the high-tech weapon of the day. Nobody had seen this before, by and large, on our side. Never had seen it. This is the main battle method of the British Army. You'd fire twice, maybe 3 times. You couldn't see through the smoke at that point. And then these would go on. And that's how they fought. So Bunker Hill, we drove them back twice. On the 3rd one, we'd run out of powder. And up the hill they come. So you can imagine 500 people coming up with this on the end, and you know what's going to happen. And eventually then we learned how to fight the same way for von Steuben.
This was a standard issue for the Continental Army, but for the militia, we didn't have bayonets. So we had to either shoot, or when the bayonets were coming at you, then you'd retreat. So it a different form of battle.
All right, yeah, the hook's coming out.
The hook. Okay.
No, go ahead, Andre. Do you have one more? One more question.
I was going to ask if there are any reenactments. Like I know there's several of the Civil War. Are there any reenactments of the Revolutionary?
You know, there's a fellow named Daryl Osborne. He has a website called You Can Live History Now. His are the best. He works with grade school kids. He does, I think, 2 or 3 a year. He can outfit 600 kids Continental, militia, British, Hessians, Indians, spies, and he gets them all together. They practice for about 2 weeks, and he's got the guns for them, and then he'll take them out. We just did one at Bear Creek out there to reenact a battle. And he'll film it. He has professional filmmakers that do a DVD with narration over. But these are the little souvenir muskets that we used to find in the shops. He's got a tube that goes down the side and comes up by the hammer. So these kids the night before are loading cartridges with flour in them. So on the battlefield, they're putting in the flour, they're taking a knee, they're cocking it, and when he says fire, they're blowing in that tube. So when he says fire, you got 100 little muskets blowing white smoke. And you got cannons in the back that they've loaded with flour with scoops and packed them, and bellows coming off the back of that, and 1 or 2 kids will jump on the bellows at the command of the cannons. That's a great reenactment.
But they do have adult reenactments as well, and it's a little more realistic with muskets and so on. So.
There are a few. And also an outfit called the Visionaires. And it's high school age kids and younger. They do 2 a year. One is at the church just off 470 Morrison Road in September. The spring one is over. And other than going to Williamsburg, these kids are authentic. They study this hard. They have about 25 stations, everything from battle surgeons to schools to riflesmiths to sutlers, and they'll do a battle reenactment at that too. And I think it costs a whopping $5 to get in, and it's a great day there just to see this stuff and hear presentations like this from different people. So we'll get out of the way.
All right. Well, we're not done with you yet. Wayne, we give we donate books to a small elementary school library in Denver. And for every book that goes in there, there's a book plate like this.
Oh, great.
This is for you to keep. I don't have one for you. We'll try and get one to you.
That's all.
Okay.
But yeah, this is to encourage reading.
Great.
Okay?
Nice.
Wonderful.
So thank you.
Thank
now,
you very
which one
much.
of you gets to make somebody happy today?
He's the commander. Kind of did all this.
Come over here. Come on. What's wrong? What'd you do? Pick a winning ticket.
All right. This is it.
All right, let's see here. 873. All right, there you go. Where's your little bag?
Well, thank you.
Where's the
We
little
enjoyed
bag?
it.
You're very welcome. It's in here. Okay.
Where's my lunch?
Yeah, I know. You gotta. We have to get
Who's
that.
keeping the happy money this morning?
Barbara, you need to give him his $10. Yes, there is a blue marble in there. See
Yes,
it?
there.
Okay, now I have to do it all over again.
Put it up higher. Too quick.
All right. There we go. Okay. I would like to remind everybody that there's a board meeting tomorrow morning at Cottrell's. It's going to be a busy board meeting. So if you ever wanted to see what happens behind the scenes, and you may not want to, it's kind of like making sausage, but we will be at Cottrell's tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Yeah. With that, would you please stand and join me in the things we think, say, and do? Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? With that, go out and have a great week.
Take this off for me. That's right.